St. John chapter 11, you have it, say amen. St. John 11, verse number 5, it reads this way. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. But oddly, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed on where he was for 2 more days. Let me read that again. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. He loved Martha. He loved her sister. He loved Lazarus. But oddly, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was. Now, Jesus loved Martha. He loved her sister. He loves Lazarus. And he gets the news that the one he loves is sick. In the Message Bible, Eugene Peterson says, but oddly, he stayed on where he was a few more days. I want to talk tonight from this thought, when God seems odd. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. When God seems odd. Family, there is, for the Christian, at times a point of difficulty when we're trying to connect with God. At times, even though we love God, it seems that we are disconnected. Or we lack clarity regarding God. A plethora of writers have given philosophical and biblical presuppositions to help us crystallize this difficulty. It's hard at times to connect with God. It's hard. Charles Ryrie, the systematic theologian, says it's hard for us to connect with God. He says because of this dichotomy of divinity. Charles Ryrie posited that God is analogous to a 2-sided coin. Every coin has a heads and a tail side. God is like that. God is on one side of that coin is the incomprehensibility of God. Simply the things about God that are incomprehensible to the human mind. We can't fully grasp or wrap our minds around. But on the other side of that same coin is what Ryrie calls the knowability of God. And that's when God will reveal God's self in specific and reliable ways. Some things are incomprehensible, some things are knowable. And so it's hard to connect with God. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian, suggested it's hard to connect with God. He says because saints and believers have been relegated and incapacitated by what he calls a cheap grace. Yes. It is a grace that wants promotion without pain. Grace that desires frustration without favor. And favor without frustration. And because of that, he says, because we haven't understood the cost of discipleship, that it's hard to connect with God. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish theologian, said it's hard to connect with God because of what he called the teleological suspension of the ethical. Meaning that sometimes when we come to God, that we can't come to God from the realm of the cognitive or the intellectual or the academic, but we have to come with God, to God with what Kierkegaard called in fear and in trembling. So sometimes it's hard for us to connect with God. Even the biblical writers join in on this difficulty of connection. One writer says it's hard for us to connect with God simply because God's ways are not our ways. And God's thoughts and not our thoughts. Another writer using poetry and prose said it's hard to connect with God because 1,000 years in our sight are but as a day in the eyesight of God. The writer of the Pentateuch says it's hard for us to connect with God because there are some secret things that belong only to our God. And that's why I thank God for our ancestors, grandmama and granddaddy. May not have had a lot of education, formal training, but had good theological genius. They said some things we just have to understand better by and by. Because it's hard for us to connect with God, I believe God allows us to engage in conversations that may be often inquisitive in manner. So the meaning that sometimes God will engage us in conversations that may be full of interrogatives or questions, because that's God's allowance or God's way of trying to reconnect us when we're disconnected. One day out in a tent around Genesis 16 and Genesis 17, yes, sir, Abram and Sarah were disconnected from the divinity of God as they were trying to figure out if it was possible for their posterity to ever come into being. They would ever be given a child. And God connected them by asking a question. God asked them in a tent, is there anything too hard for God? That was the divinity of God questioning the humanity of Abram and Sarah. In John chapter 6, Jesus, after feeding the crowd, John 6:66 says, from that time many went back to his disciples and walked no more with them. He turned to those disciples and in his divinity raised them a question. He asked them, now will you also go away and leave me? That was the divinity of Jesus trying to question the humanity of those remaining disciples. And what about even in the book of Ezekiel? Around that 37th chapter. Ezekiel was taken to a valley of bones. Bones which had been bleached dry by the unsympathetic Babylonian sun. Yes, sir. That day the divinity of Jehovah questioned the humanity of Ezekiel. God asked Ezekiel, son of man, y'all gonna help me get that? Can these bones live? That's the humanity of Ezekiel being questioned by the divinity of Jehovah. And conversely in Scripture, you and I will see where humanity raised questions of divinity. It's in John 6. When Jesus asked them, will you also go away and leave? Simon Peter responded, not with an exclamation or proclamation. It was an interrogation. Simon says, now, Jesus, you ask us a question, but let me ask you one. To whom shall we go? You're the one, you have the words of eternal life. That's the humanity of Peter questioning the divinity of Jesus. And what about in Mark chapter 4? Jesus told the boys to get in a boat and go through the Sea of Gadara to pass over to the other side. The weather was tranquil and serene, but in the middle of the deep, the lightning started to write its mysterious language across the bosom of the Mesopotamian sky. Jesus was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow, and the disciples awake him. And their humanity asked him a question, Master, and y'all gonna help me build this. Carest thou not that we perish? That was the humanity of the disciples questioning the divinity of Jesus. Jesus got up, wiped sleep out of his eyes and said, peace, be still. And what about even in Mark chapter 15? Around that 31st verse, when our Lord stepped out the shoes of a Savior and stepped into the shoes of a sinner. And the Aramaic of his day, he cried, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. Quoting from Psalm 22, our Lord said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Even Jesus, in his humanity on the cross, felt that God had turned his back on him, and he asked a question: God, have you forsaken me? Now, my grandmother would have had problems. She's with the Lord now. She would have had problems with my proposition tonight, because my grandmother always taught me. She was apostolic, overcoming holiness, and she always taught me, son, you should never question God. And I knew why she taught me that, because she was trying to get me to respect God. She was trying to get me to reverence God. But the older I got, and the more I read scriptures and got involved in theological studies, I understood she was speaking that because she saw God as a powerful force and not necessarily as a personal father. You help me. She was talking from the realm of religion and not relationship. She thought that questioning God was a sin, and that if you question God, that was a sin. But if you read the book of Psalms, half the book of Psalms is questions. Like, Lord, how long? Lord, when are you going to show up? Lord, are you going to avenge my adversary? Humanity lamenting to God who they felt disconnected from. And if questioning God was a sin, then that would have meant that Jesus, on the cross, would have become a sinner. Now, Jesus became sin, but he never sinned. But if questioning God was a sin, that would have then forbidden and forbade him from becoming the propitiation of our sins. For the writer of Hebrews says, in all points he was tempted like we are, yet he was without sin. Questioning God is not a sin. Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher, put it this way: it's all right for us to question the nature of God, as long as we don't question the existence of God. I wish y'all help me work. Y'all not being fair to me tonight. It's all right to question the nature of God. Just don't question the existence of God. Because when we come to God, number one, we must believe that he is. And that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Now, and so I had to raise all that, because I hear some of you asking me now, why was all that necessary? Why was all that theological, philosophical diatribe necessary? We spent 7 minutes on that. Why was that necessary? Well, that was necessary because that was the front porch of the sermon. And if I didn't start out like that, you'd accuse me of blasphemy, heresy, and unorthodoxy. So I had to lay the front porch before we walk in the living room. I had to establish that questioning God is not a sin. Why? Because when I penetrate our pericope tonight, I made to ask a bunch of questions. Tonight, this text unfolds in a village called Bethany. Yes, sir. An inconsequential village on the eastern slopes of the Mount of Olives, about 1.72 miles away from Jerusalem. There in Bethany resided a family of siblings that Jesus had developed quite an affinity with, particularly the two sisters and a brother, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Whenever he needed to be refreshed from preaching throughout Palestine, he'd make that trek to Bethany, because that family of siblings would minister to him and minister for him. Well, while Jesus was away from Bethany, perhaps 27 miles north in a village called Perea, did he receive a message from the sister saying, Master, now he whom thou lovest, the one that you say you love, Lazarus, whose name etymologically meant one who is comforted, one who is helped, one who is loved by God. The one you say you love is sick. And Jesus' response, Calvary, is problematic for me. Because Eugene Peterson, the Message Bible, says when he gets the word that his brother is sick, but oddly, he stayed on where he was a few more days. But oddly. Now, this this didn't bother me upon first observation, but when I did a cursory review of the chapter, that's when my theological attention was heightened.
Yeah.
I got a problem tonight because in St. John chapter 2, Jesus' disciples and his mother was invited to a place called Cana. Can the church say Cana? Cana of Galilee, and there he went to the wedding and the reception of a couple that is so insignificant that John doesn't even bother to record their name. We don't know if they went to Sabbath school with him. We don't know if they grew up in Nazareth with them. We don't know anything about them. But they ran out of wine at this 7-day Jewish wedding festival. His mother went up to him and said, "Son, have no wine." And then Jesus said, tell you what, servants, y'all, bring me the water pots and fill the water pots up with water. And there in John 2 at the wedding of an anonymous couple, he didn't want them to be embarrassed. He didn't want them to be shamed as they started their life together. So at a wedding of an anonymous, insignificant couple, does he turn water into Hennessy? I mean, he turns water. Y'all pray, I had a flashback. He turns water into wine. At the wedding of a couple that's so insignificant that John doesn't even tell us who they are. But in St. John chapter 11, the one he says he loves, he's acting hard. St. John chapter 3. Man named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews, a Pharisee, came to Jesus by night. He comes at night because he doesn't want his social political status to be threatened by being connected with Jesus in the daytime. So he comes at night when nobody's looking and says, "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher come from God. Nobody can do these miracles that you're doing except God be with him." Jesus said, "Nick, listen, that which is born of flesh is flesh, that which is born of spirit is spirit. Well, not, I said, you must be born again." Nicodemus said, "Well, how can a man be born when he's old? Can he the second time his mother's womb be born?" He said, "You must be born again." And then Jesus takes the time in John chapter 3 to preach the greatest sermon that's ever been preached. Not to a nice crowd like this, but to an audience of one. The greatest gospel sermon, not to thousands, but to one. He says, "Nick, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes on him shall not perish but have everlasting life." So in St. John chapter 3, he preaches the greatest sermon ever to a coward. But in St. John chapter 4, the one he says he loves, he's acting oddly. Y'all not being fair. St. John chapter 4. A woman in Sychar, Samaria. This place that Jews had no dealings with ever since 722 BC, when the Assyrians deported former Jewish prince of war. They cohabitated with that group that formed this special relationship between Baal and Jehovah. And these former deported princes of war married this crossbreed group called Samaritans. They were a crossbreed, deemed ceremonially unclean. And for 8 centuries, Jews would do anything to avoid Samaria. But John 4 says Jesus must have needs. Y'all gonna hold me for a minute. Go through Samaria. He stops at noon at Jacob's well. A woman came to draw water. He said, "Listen, can you bring me a drink of water?" She said, "Well, how you being a Jew? Ask me, a Samaritan, for a drink." You know Jews have no dealing with Samaritans. She said, "Lady, listen, if you know who it was who was asking you for a drink, you wouldn't let me ask you for a drink. You'd be asking me for a drink. Tell you what, go call your husband." He said, "Sir, I don't have no husband." He said, "You're right. You've had 5. You're living with one now that's not yours. That makes 6. And that was the prerequisite for me stopping by this well. So you can be me, the 7th man. 7 meaning perfection and completion. 7 meaning whatever has been going on in your life before I got here is over. It's perfected. And when she met the 7th man, she dropped her water pots. Went back into the city, said, come see a man who told me all things that I did is not this to Christ. So in St. John 4, he provides deliverance to a crossbreed. But in St. John 11, the one that he says he loves, he's acting. Y'all still acting funny. St. John chapter 5. He's going through a city called Bethesda. They have 5 porches there and a pool there. And around that pool lay the impotent, halt, withered, blind folk who were waiting for the manifestation of this Canaanite cosmogony. They felt that annually some superstitious mildew would take place, and an angel would come to trouble the pool, and whoever jumped into the pool that was troubled would be healed of their infirmity. John tells us a man had been laying there for 38 long years. Jesus stops by the pool and said, will thou be made whole? And evidently he was like some of your cousins and mine. Instead of answering the question, you know, Jesus, I'm like this because my dad didn't pay child support. And my granddad was a Rolling Stone, and my mom, I didn't ask you all that. Do you want to tell you what? Boy, just take up your bed. Start walking. St. John 5, a crippled man gets delivered. But y'all still quiet. St. John chapter 11, the one he says he loves, he's acting. Okay, y'all still not there. St. John chapter 6. He had his fall revival in a place called Bethsaida. It was a desert place, 5,000 men there, not counting one of the children. They only had 200 pennyworth in the treasure. They was broke. It was hard there for preachers, pimps, and Jesus. He said, do we have anybody's lunch? And they found a little ass lunch. 2 pieces of tilapia and 5 red lobster biscuits. And he multiplied it and broke it and fed the whole crowd. But most of them, when they ate, the greedy folk went back home and they didn't tell him thank you. So in St. John chapter 6, he feeds an ungrateful crowd. But in St. John chapter 11, then when he says he loves, y'all still ain't getting it here. He's acting odd. And y'all help me out, move on. St. John chapter 8. They brought him a woman who's caught in the very act of adultery. She is caught in the act. I always want as a lad, if they caught her in the act, why did they only bring her? And not the joker she was caught with too. But you know, the church ain't much different. You know, we do the same thing. You know how the young girl who's not married in the choir sang the alto? She gets pregnant when she ain't married. We put her out in the choir. But the drummer that got her pregnant, he played the drum next Sunday. We do the same thing. We're selective in our... Jesus writes on the ground. He who was without sin, let him cast the first stone. They went home for the elders and the youngest. Woman, where are your accusers? Neither I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. In St. John chapter 8, a woman who's caught gets forgiveness. But I hope you got it now. In St. John chapter 11, here it is, the only one that it says he loves. Can I tell you why this upset me? Because in my opinion, if anybody should have gotten immediate attention, to me this thinks like it's the one that he loved. The only one that he had a previous relationship. The only one that extra biblical sources say that would minister to him and minister for him. Everybody else gets immediate right now provision. Except nobody else had ever ministered for him. But they get theirs just like that. Except now unless y'all tune me out and get mad at me tonight. Can I be honest? Can you handle my transparency? This text is how I've been feeling for the past 2 years. One week I get a call that my godmother died. The very next week, my mama died. And didn't tell me she was leaving. 3 days after my mama died, my best friend died. 30 minutes after we got off the phone. 3 weeks after my mama died, my sister died. 5 days after my sister died, my 40-year-old brother had a massive stroke. A few weeks later, my older sister went into cardiac failure. Within 4 weeks, I had to bury my godmother, my mother, my best friend, my sister, the same hands I lifted in worship. Same hands I had to close my sister's eyes, close my mama, my sister's casket for the last time. And it made me wonder, the woman who raised me in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, how she struggled, but yet the woman who lived right across the street, 87 years old, ain't in nobody's church, no health problems, will cuss you out for walking by a sidewalk, smoke weed at 87, sell look out the back of a house. Y'all said y'all wasn't going to judge me. Y'all said y'all wasn't going to judge me. I'm like, God, if you got to take anybody, can we talk about it next time? Can I make some recommendations? Y'all not going to help me. I pray for other folk with cancer, and they get up. Pray for my own mama and my own family. And the pain, and I wonder, God, why does it seem sometimes? Y'all told me out. I see you judging me. You judging me. Yes, your faces tell me you judge me. Well, let me help you. Don't you ever criticize somebody's steps if you ain't walked in their shoes. Yeah, I love God, but this thing, it troubled me because I seen other folk get up. Some of you have been one. I've been paying my tithes, but it seems like low-down folk climb the corporate ladder. They get the promotion. Here I'm paying my tithes, and the company shuts down. Am I talking to anybody around here? You ever wonder, like Asaph, why does it seem the wicked prospers? I said to God, God, if this is how you treat the folk you love, hate me. Give me mine straight with, expeditiously, forthwith, right now, urgently. Give me mine now. Why does it seem, God, that you would deliberately act oddly in the lives of the folks that you say? Can anybody else feel this beside me? I'm trying to serve you in the church, trying to serve our city, trying to do the right thing. But the more living we are, the more racist society gets. Come on, God. Come on, God. We've come through 400 years of oppression. We've been praying and serving and in the civil rights movement. And the best you can do for us is Trump. That's the best you can do, God? You allowed that to happen? Here's what God said to me. He said, you bold. And since you got the nerve to ask, I got the unmitigated gall to answer you. I want you to tell Dayton, Ohio, that sometimes I would deliberately and intentionally act oddly in the lives of those who I love. Those who ministered to me and ministered for me. I will deliberately delay and create tension in your theology. But I'll do it for a few reasons. Number one, can I give you these reasons? I'm almost finished. He said to me to tell you, number one, that I will act oddly in your life. Number one, because I want to see who is going to trust me in the face of death. Can the church say, trust me in the face of death? Yeah, the text tells us that when he stopped acting oddly, finally made it to Bethany. Verse 15 through 20 tells us that Lazarus, when he got there, had already been in the grave 4 days. Verse 20, Martha hears that he's coming. She runs out to meet him, and she's kind of, psychologists would call her passive aggressive. She says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. She said, Lord, his autopsy report doesn't say cause of death heart attack, cause of death stroke. His autopsy report says cause of death, Jesus was absent. Your absence is why my brother is not here. But I know even now, whatever I ask of God, God will give it. He says, Martha, your brother shall rise. And she gets theological on him. She says, well, I know eschatologically speaking, he's going to get up in the end, in the apocalypse, when Gabriel blows the trumpet calm, and I know he's going to get up at the end. He says, Martha, evidently you really don't know who I am. So let me just break you off a piece of my resume and my dossier. The problem, Martha, you have is you're looking for resurrection, not realizing you're looking at it. I am the resurrection. I am the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live again. But let's be fair. Let's be fair. Let's be fair. Martha had heard about him dealing with death on 2 occasions. One occasion, a little girl died. Jesus went up in that loft when she died, brought her back to life, but the people were saying that girl was not dead. She was just severely asthmatic. Another occasion, Luke tells us he's walking through Nain, sees a widow carrying her son to bury. Jesus stops the funeral procession, touches the bier or the casket. The young man gets up and goes home with his mama. Folks said, no, that young man wasn't dead. He was just in a deeply comatose condition. And evidently the coroner was derelict in performing the autopsy. Because in the first century world, they felt, the Jews did, that if somebody died, the spirit could disconnect from the body, but within 72 hours, the spirit could reconnect with the corpse. And that dead person could get up within 72 hours. So Jesus said, Martha, I get it. I know what you heard about. And so since y'all dismissed the young girl's resurrection, since y'all hated on the boy in Nain's resurrection, and since y'all believe a spirit of the dead can linger for 72 hours and reconnect with the corpse, this time, when I show up, I'll show up after he's been dead and in the grave 4 days. So when I bring him back to life, can't nobody take the credit for this? Or y'all gonna hold it around here, but my God, can I tell y'all something? Sometimes God may do some odd stuff because he wants you to see will you trust him regardless of what it looks like. I wish somebody said, I'm gonna trust him regardless. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what the doctor reports say. I don't care what the divorce papers say. I don't care how bad it feels like. You can say, I will trust in the Lord. Can someone around here tonight shout right back at me and say, I believe it. I believe what he's saying. Matter of fact, you can't make me doubt him because I know too much about him. God said, I'll do some stuff late. I'll do odd stuff in your life because I want you to know I don't need a heartbeat to perform a miracle. And maybe somebody tonight thinks it's all over for you. But can I tell you something? You can trust him because it don't matter what it looks like. It ain't over. I'm going to feel better here in a minute. It ain't over until God says it's over. Look at your neighbor and say, you shall live and not die. And so sometimes, oh God, somebody say, I trust you, I trust you. Even if I've never seen it before, even if it never happened before, I still I trust you. I act godly because I want to see who's going to trust me in the face of death. Number two, I got to act godly because I want to see who's going to talk to me when you're depressed. I want to see who's going to trust me in the face of death, but who's going to talk to me even when you're depressed? The clue is right there in verse 20. Martha hears that he's coming. She runs out to meet him. But look at the end, the B clause of verse 20. But Mary sat still in the house. Now this is a trip. It's funny because the last time he was in their house, according to Luke chapter 10, Mary was in his face in worship. Martha was back in the kitchen cutting up the turnip greens. As a matter of fact, Luke tells us that Martha wanted Jesus to rebuke Mary. Because Mary is a worshiper in Luke 10, Martha is a worker. But notice here now, John 11, the script has been miraculously flipped. For Mary, who was just in his face in Luke 10, is now in the house, and Martha, who's in the house, is now in his face. What's going on with these sisters? Come on, and let's engage in some homiletical hyperbole. Lend me the theaters of your imaginations for a second and join this conversation between these sisters. The servant says, Jesus is coming. Look at Martha wrapping her hair, putting her sandals on, and Mary is on the couch. Martha perhaps says to Mary, Mary, Jesus is coming. Are you going to meet him? Mary says, not right now. Perhaps Martha says to Mary, Mary, do I detect an attitude? Why aren't you getting dressed to go and see Jesus? And Mary perhaps says back to her sister, I don't need to see him. Martha says, why, Mary? She says, because as many times as we have cooked for him. Now, she ain't cooked nothing, but as many times as we have cooked for him. Mary perhaps said, the last time he was in our house, I gave up my seated posture-peeping mattress. I gave him the remote control. I slept on the sofa so he could be comfortable. Our brother got sick. He didn't bother to even call us. He didn't come by the hospital. Didn't send a prayer team or a junior deacon by to pray for us. Y'all ain't feeling us here. Our brother died. He didn't bring no Coca-Cola, no Kentucky Fried Chicken to the center to eat with us and play cards with us before the funeral. We ain't heard nothing. He ain't sent us a tweet, a text, Instagram, MySpace, message in a bottle, Morse code, carrier pigeon. He ain't sent a fruit basket, a card, a condolence, a flower. Didn't ride to the funeral with us, didn't go to the cemetery with us, and now he got the nerve to show his face around here. And our brother been in the grave 4 days and ain't got nothing to say to us. Come here, don't you hang up, don't hang up. Guess what? Mary's like a lot of us. We don't mind being in his presence as long as you got money in the bank. But what happens when your portfolio looks like a sick man's EKG? We don't mind giving him worship when you and your boo, your bae on the same page. But he wants to know what will happen when your love song goes from Luther Vandross's If Only for One Night to B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone. Yeah, he says anybody can shop when you got a job. Anybody can praise when your mama is alive. But I want to see when you talk to me and stay in my presence when I don't give you what you want to give me. I want to see how mature your faith is. Have you made me a cosmic Santa Claus? An ontological bellhop? You made me a name it and claim it, blab it and grab it God. Well, as long as I'm doing what you want, you're good. Well, let me do some odd stuff in your life. I need to do it because I want to bring some integrity to your testimony. Yeah, I'm tired of you going to church every Sunday. I bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my praise is what I do. Even when I'm going through, I vow to praise him in the good, in the bad, when I'm happy, when I'm sad. He said, okay, I heard all that. I heard all that stuff you've been saying. So let me do some hard stuff in your life to see where you testifying or testifying. Because I don't want no relationship with nobody who just want me when things going well. Do you want me or do you want what I can give to you? I'm trying to do some hard stuff to move you from praise to worship. Praise says if your mama live, I lift my hands. But worship said if she dies, God, your position isn't changed by my condition. You're still God. If my mother lives, you're still God. If my sister dies, and I've learned how to give God worship, not for what he does, but for who he is. Is there anybody around dating tonight, even when things are going bad, and lift your hand in the presence and say, Lord, I trust you. Lord, I thank you. I'm not going to stay in the house when the preacher make me mad. I'm not going to stay mad when I don't understand. I'm going to stay connected to you, regardless of what it looks like. Shake the neighbor's hands in there. I'm like Job. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Somebody throw your hands up. I'm going to keep on talking to him. I don't know why I'm preaching this. This wasn't my message tonight, but I feel somebody here who can identify what I'm going through. Well, will you keep on trusting him? Ooh, yeah. Listen, he says, let me. Let me. Can I have 10 minutes? Can I have 10 minutes? Let me do some hard stuff to see who's going to trust me in the face of death. Who's going to talk to me even when you're depressed. But third, let me do some hard stuff to see who's going to take away the distractions. I'm almost there. He says, listen, ladies, let me cut through the chase. Show me. Well, you lady. They said, well, Jesus, his body's already begun to decay. He said, I didn't ask you that. Show me. Well, you lady. They took Jesus to the pool of Lazarus. The Bible says Jesus said, Father, I thank you that you always hear me when I pray. Then the text says Jesus wept. And after praying and weeping, he says 3 words, Lazarus, come forth. And when he spoke those words, his voice evicted the aroma of Lazarus' decomposing composition. Lazarus, come forth. His voice reinvigorated Lazarus' anatomical makeup. Lazarus, come forth. His voice stagnated and eliminated the process of rigor mortis. Lazarus, come forth. His voice went down the corridors of time and eternity and recaptured a soul on his way to the bosom of Abraham. Lazarus came forth, and then Jesus said, now loose him. Y'all ain't being fair. Loose him and let him go. And here was a very interesting dichotomy here, because Jesus was wanted to call Lazarus from his history to destiny. But there was one thing keeping Lazarus stuck in the grave, which was his history, and not coming into destiny. He says, listen, I'm going to speak the word, Lazarus come forth. That's what John Calvin, the Reformation theologian, would call divine sovereignty. But the thing that keeps them stuck in history and not walk into destiny is the prerequisite for, or the need for, human responsibility. So I need somebody in the crowd to move the stone. The stone is the thing that keeps him in his history and prevents him from walking into destiny. I'll speak the word, but y'all got to move the stone. The stone is the distraction to his destiny. My job is not to remove the stone. Y'all making me work too hard. If you notice the Bible, 95% of the miracles were not just divine sovereignty, but also included human responsibility. Moses, I'll speak to the young Suf of the Red Sea. Divine sovereignty. But you got to stretch out your rod. Human responsibility. I didn't come to play tonight. Joshua, I'll speak to the wall of Jericho and they can come tumbling down. Divine sovereignty. But you got to. Human responsibility. Won't with this your blood? I got medicine in the hem of my garment to heal your malady. Divine sovereignty. But you got to press through the crowd and reach out and touch my garment. Human, y'all got to break some in. Blind man, I could spit on the ground and make clay out of the spittle and anoint your eyes. Divine sovereignty. But you got to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. See, the problem with us, we're waiting on God to manifest breakthrough. You wait on God to bust a move, and God is waiting on you to bust your move. God says, stop praying for me to open the windows of heaven if you're too stingy and selfish to give me a dime out of every dime. Maybe there's a brother around here tonight. You wonder why your wife's frustrated with you. Maybe you wonder why your wife don't want to have nothing to do with you. She's frustrated because she's tired. Yeah, tired. Tired you watching the big three play basketball on Sunday. Monday night football on Monday. Working late on Tuesday. Going bowling on Wednesday. At the club on Thursday. Playing golf on Friday. With your frat brothers all day and all night Saturday night. And you wonder why the candy store closed 3 o'clock in the morning when you get home Sunday. Y'all have to break something here. Because it ain't just about divine sovereignty. Maybe you got to go home and realize something the brothers can't do for you. The break something here. Maybe there's a lady who's wondering why your husband don't want to come home. Riding all week working in Columbus and Cincinnati. Huh? 60 and 70 hours in traffic. Beautiful women bring him muffins and Starbucks. Come home on Friday. After a long day, a long week of what? You answer the door. Rag around your head. Noxema on your face. Flannel pajamas, mismatched socks, all on your house shoes. And you wonder why you praying that God help him come home. Let me ask you a question. Would you come home and look at you? Come on, go to the mall and find a Victoria's Secret and help that brother out. Come on, it ain't all up to God, it's also up to you. Human responsibility. So you pray as if it all depends on God, but you work as if it all depends on you. I got to go. Let me ask you a question tonight. What is your stone? Who is your stone? The thing that's got you stuck in your history. And until you move, you and I can never walk into identity. That stone is your distraction. And as soon as you move it, God said, I'm going to open up new possibility. New dimensions on the verge horizon. But you got to have faith to move. I'm done. Let me see who's going to trust me in the face of death. Who's going to talk to me when you're depressed? Who's going to thank me? Who's going to take away the distraction? But fourthly and finally, who's going to thank me for your deliverance? I'm finished. Lazarus came forth. He said, loose him and let him go. Then the religious people tried to kill Jesus. He had to flee and went from him. He comes back, St. John 12:1 says 6 days before Passover. He's in the home of Simon the leper, we believe. Dinner has been prepared there, and Lazarus is there, Jesus is there, Mary, Martha is there. Verse 3 said, Mary! It's deep now. The same one who in St. John 11:20 was in the house. This time she takes what the historian Flavius Josephus calls a year's worth of income. A pound of stickernard. And pours a year's worth of income on the feet of the Kurios Christos. Jesus the Christ. And then the Bible says that she washed his feet with her hair. That's deep, because according to 1 Corinthians, Paul said that a woman should never be out in public with her hair down. Only prostitutes did that. When your hair down was a sign of first century prostitution. Only a woman's husband was supposed to see her hair. Matter of fact, Paul said in 1 Corinthians that the woman's hair was her glory. So I said, Mary, had a little talk with Mary, imaginary conversation. I said, Mary, why do you do that? You break proper Palestinian and Pauline protocol. You're supposed to have your head covered. The Bible says your hair is your glory. She said, well, you don't get it. I said, what don't I get? She said, listen here. When I'm in the presence of Jesus, y'all excuse me grammatically, I ain't got no glory. So I take all of my glory, let it down and put it on the feet of the one who will do our glory. Oh, you don't hear me? I said, Mary, why do you do that? She said, I'm doing number one because of what he's already done for me. I said, what you mean? She said, well, I'm in chapter 12, but in chapter 11, he brought my brother back to life, and I didn't tell him thank you. But I said to myself, whenever I see him again, I don't care if I'm in the White House, the outhouse, Simon's house, or Morehouse, even if I'm in chapter 12, and I look back over the past chapter of my life, I'm going to thank him right now for what he did for me on yesterday. Is there anybody around this house tonight can give God some praise for what he's already done for you? Come on, come on. You ought to give God praise tonight for what he's already done for you on you. Matter of fact, you ought to tell me, if you never do another thing for me, you've already been better than me. She said, I'm praising him because of what because of what he's done, but also what he's getting ready to do. I said, I don't get it. She said, well, what I poured on his feet was called embalming fluid. That's what they used to anoint the body of the Greco-Roman aristocracy. I said, so why would you put embalming fluid on the feet of a living Jesus? She said, because it's my anticipatory expression of what I expect him to do for me. She said, I'm in chapter 12 now, but in chapter 19, in 7 chapters, he's going to die for my sins. So I'm going to anoint him and praise him in advance for stuff he's going to do for me in chapter 19. Why don't you shake a neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, it's chapter 12 tonight. But I'm expecting chapter 19. Chapter 19 is a job, a better job, raises and bonuses, unexpected checks, peace in my household, my child getting a scholarship for college, the church meeting its financial budget, yeah, a loved one being saved. Somebody shout, that's chapter 19. But I'm not going to wait until chapter 19 to give it praise. But right now, I'm going to praise him in chapter 12 for what he's getting ready to do in my own life. And is there anybody here tonight who want to help a preacher give God a chapter 19, praise. Oh Lord, why don't you shake a neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, I don't know what you're waiting for, but neighbor, I'm getting ready to give him a praise in advance for stuff he's getting ready to do in my own life. And I need somebody tonight to help me give God some praise. Yeah, I need somebody to not be mean tonight, to shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, chapter 19 is around the corner, but I'm not gonna wait until I see it to praise him. But right now, I'm gonna praise him for stuff he's getting ready to do. I got to close now, but before I close, I wish I had somebody that wasn't too mean to lift your hand and say, I'm ready for chapter 19, because I have not seen nor ear have heard the good things that are in store for you and for me. Shake that neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, agree with me for my chapter 19. I need a raise. I need some healing. I need deliverance. Shake their hands. I need that deliverance. Now look back at that neighbor and say, neighbor, when the preacher counts to 3, this next praise is for your chapter 19. I want you to praise him for my chapter 19. And I want to praise him for your chapter 19. Are y'all ready to give God glory for chapter 19? I said, are you ready to give God the glory for chapter 19? That's around the corner. Shake your neighbor's hands. I'm getting ready. I'm looking for a miracle. I can't see the invisible. The sky is the limit to what I can have. I said, are you ready? I said, are you ready? Do you believe when prayers go up? Oh, blessing will come on down. I don't have nobody. Y'all too bullshit. I need somebody to open their mouth and say, I'm ready for my chapter 19. I said, are you ready? Do you believe that tonight is a night of miracles, deliverance and breakthrough? Yes, Lord, when I count to 3, give God the glory for your neighbor's chapter 19. I said, are you ready? I said, are you ready? Are you ready to run through troops and leap over some walls? Are y'all ready? One. Oh, y'all ain't ready. Y'all. I need some Holy Ghost folk. I said, are you ready to give God your best praise? One. Now this ain't for you, this is for your neighbor's blessing. 2. Are y'all ready? 3. People say, get ready, it's around the corner. Do y'all believe? Shout yeah! Shout yeah! Shout yeah! Won't he do it? Won't he do it? Shout it out! Shout it out! Yeah! We got to go. If we can stand. Reach out your hands. This is not what I planned to preach tonight. I had a real good sermon planned for tonight. Join hand. And somebody, I gave y'all my heart tonight. I'm still struggling. Different songs come on the radio. I think my mama just started crying. I love God, but it's tough. I miss my sister. I pick my phone up sometimes just to play messages that I saved with Mama's voice. She's been dead 2 years. I'm still playing. I just wonder, God is just, I send you for others, and why not me? And somebody tonight can relate to what I'm saying to some degree. You seen everybody that's getting there in chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 9. It wouldn't hurt as bad if you didn't see everybody else get theirs. You want God? What about me? This is what the Lord told me to tell you tonight. He said, don't forget this. Hold that hand. He said, the couple got some wine. Nicodemus got a sermon. The crossbreed got deliverance. The crippled man got healing. The crowd got some fish. The one who was caught, she got forgiveness. But Lazarus got something the rest didn't get. He got life. Which means sometimes the greater your struggle, the greater your breakthrough gonna be. Hold a hand. I know it hurt. And if you ain't been there yet, keep on living. You never could told me 3 years ago I'd be feeling like I feel right now. Up sometimes, down sometimes. Can't figure out what happened. Hold that hand. But God told me to tell you, if you can hold on, chapter 19 is around the corner. Hold that hand, hold that hand. Hold that hand, hold that hand. Hold that hand tight. That's a real person. Real people have real issues. Don't believe the smile, the no nice clothes. Sometimes they took everything somebody had just to get here tonight. Hold that hand. What I want you to do for me, I'm finished. I want you to pray out loud, one at a time. I want you to pray for that person on your left and right. Open your mouth. I want you to pray, let them hear us praying at downtown Dayton. It's all right to cry, sister. It's all right. Open it, hold that hand. Open your mouth and pray that God will get them to chapter 19. Come on, open your mouth. Sit down now. Open your mouth. Come on, open your mouth. Begin to pray. I don't know, just ask God to bless them. Come on, ask God to keep them. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Come on, pray for somebody. Touch somebody. Hallelujah. Touch somebody. Pray for them. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Do it. Do it. the glory. Woo! That's it, that's it, that's it. Pray, 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 pray. I feel the Holy Ghost. I feel the cloud being lifted. I see you being destroyed. Come on, get that, get that, get that, get that. Healing, healing, healing. Healing, deliverance, chapter 19. Come on. Don't y'all play with this. Don't y'all play. Yes, God. Yes, God. Get that, get that. Yes, God. Yes, God. Yeah, yeah. I feel the Holy Ghost. Somebody being set